Hello, Graphite Knights. In this video, we're going to be talking about how to draw 5-point perspective. We'll talk a little bit about 4, but specifically how we do that in fantasy settings, especially settings where there aren't always clear blocks, how we can do that from different perspectives, which is kind of a funny word to use here, but from different angles and still create 5-point perspective, whether that angle be aerial or below or above. To start, what I'm doing here is I'm making my grid. What you're going to want to do is create your 4 vanishing points. You have 2 on the horizon, 2 going vertically, and then you're going to draw that line. That's how we get that cross shape. And then you're going to make small rings that get increasingly wider that reconnect between those 2 dots in either directions until you have essentially a giant circle, or in this case, an oval here, depending on how tall your vanishing points are. And once you have those things, don't worry about this. I'm just doing a little warm-up sketch while we talk. I'm trying to get my fingers ready. This is not going to be our final sketch. And if you want to, follow along with this, pause, do it. That's totally okay. Really, what I'm going to use is this as a visual tool. So this is going to be a pretty simple thumbnail sketch. But as I'm drawing this cross out, then I'm going to put the dot that connects them at the center. If you can see at the center of that cross, that's our 5th vanishing point. So we'll have one on the left, one on the right, one on the top, and one on the bottom. Those are all vanishing points. What that means is, if you don't know, it's almost like where the horizon would be. If you had a single vanishing point and you were looking down the end of a road and the road just continually got thinner, that at the very end where you can't see any further, that's your vanishing point. We have 5. How does that happen? How do we visualize that? Well, in the real world, we don't. But I think the best way to describe this that I know is to think of it almost like 4-point is like a parachute. If we took a picture, something big, we printed that on a blanket, and then we jumped out of an airplane, and let's pretend that this blanket can actually hold us, but we were holding it by those 4 corners that had strings on them and came down to us, like we're sitting on our back. What we would have are 4 points that are drawing down and then disappear, where the image disappears. And so if you look at our 4 outer points, that's kind of like that part of the parachute. How do we get to 5-point, though? Well, we have one in the center. And so if you could, while someone was parachuting, put a rock on the very center of their parachute at its highest point, and then that point dropped down, but then you'd still have these pockets of air kind of swelling around that point, I think you'd have 5-point. I mean, not really, because it's how we're seeing the world. It's not a shape, it's a perspective. But that's kind of the idea of what we're going with here. At least it's helpful for me to think of it this way. This character here, what I'm doing with him, I'm obviously curving him along that line. If he was just falling straight down on our page, if you forgot about those curves, you can see he wouldn't have the curve that he has. But in this case, when you think about like the 4 points here, if you think about the fishbowl lens we're kind of looking at here, it's almost helpful for me to think if I had put my picture, if I had made my picture out of clay, like 2D, but out of clay, and then I was trying to roll that clay or push that clay onto the face of like a bowl or a globe or something like that, how would that kind of bend the image? And so that's what we're just shaping out here. We're just trying to get our hand used to doing that with this guy. This guy, by the way, if you don't know, he's called the Graphknight. He is the icon of our channel. He is a fantasy knight that I make graphic novels with and kind of explore the world we call Jar-nel. And we're doing a whole bunch of different art scenes to create Jar-nel. And when I do those, I like to chat with you guys. I like to express what's going on in that story, but also what we're doing art-wise, how it all connects is a really fun piece. I think this channel really serves to make really cool fantasy art, both visually and in a storytelling kind of way. And so you might hear me pivot as we go between story and writing tip. But if you have your hatchet set up, I'll tell you, if you're doing this in Procreate, that's what I'm using. I like to use the pencil because growing up as a kid, I drew a lot in journals. I didn't do a lot of other mediums. So he's the Graphknight, right? The Graphite Knight. The pencil makes sense to me, so that's what I like to use. But even if you're using Procreate, you have a limit on the amount of perspectives you can have, and that's 3 as of the time of recording. So 5-point, you're going to want to make this before you start. You just have to do it. And if you're not, then hey, you're not any further behind than someone on Procreate. Make this. put it underneath your paper. Use a light box or some light to shine it through so that you can see it. It's going to work just fine. We are now moving on to the actual drawing. And at first, when I started this, my thought was, oh, what scene do I want to do? Do I want him falling? And as I started to shape this out, I was like, I think it'd be cooler if he was jumping. And then we had a conversation, we being myself and my iPad, me and my art project, about what he would be jumping over. And so we'll get into that a little bit. But as we look at him aerially, if you've ever done an aerial project, you're going to know, or if you think about looking at someone aerially, the first thing you'll see is the head. The head is going to cover up most of the neck. You'll see the shoulders, but the shoulders will cover up most of the body, depending on the size of that person, which in turn will cover up most of the legs and most of the feet. And so he really doesn't take up too much surface area. If you think about his head, right, they say it's like, this many heads to make the average person. I think it's, what do they say? Is it 6? Is it 8? 7? I can't remember. There's a method for it that people like to use. But the point here is if you took his head and you were to carry it across his body, he would maybe take up 3 spaces. And so he's more smushed because he's tilted. And then in addition to that, we're kind of giving him the little bit of the bend that we would do as we lay him across that curve. Same thing with the hand here. The hand is going to be a little bit bigger. It's like the head because he's lifting his hands up. I think this is a cool opportunity to do this. I think hands and heads tell a lot of the story. In a little bit, I'll hide everything and you'll be able to see, obviously I don't have a hand crafted out yet, but as we're crafting out that hand, I'll hide the body and I'll hide even some of the arm, and you'll get kind of a chance to see what I mean by that and just how like much of a story hands and heads tell all on their own without the help of the other body. In fact, the body is kind of like a support to the show that the hands and the head put on. So already look at that. I can picture him in this if we wanted to do a different scene. Like he's wading through a swamp. Why are his hands up like that? Well, he must be wading through a swamp, right? I think it's very storytelling what people do with their hands. People don't walk around like that most of the time. If you do, let me know. I would love to know what occasion that's for. And so we're just kind of getting the fingers right, trying to make sure that they look well. Your first finger and your ring finger tend to kind of stick together a little bit more. The first finger and the middle finger. The ring finger tends to want to follow the middle finger. Wow, but it's not as connected. It's got like more of a gap in it sometimes. And then that pinky finger is kind of just, he's a supporting actor, but he can take on a whole twist of his own. If you make a claw kind of shape with your hand and you look at it, you'll see a little bit what I mean, and then just relax it a little bit more and you can kind of get a picture of how your hand might be if you were semi-tensed falling. That's what he's going for. We're going to put the other arm out there. I do, and I have the luxury of doing this because I am on Procreate. If I'm doing this on paper, I can still do this, but I have to just be gentle and be willing to erase like I will here on Procreate. But what I will do is I'll craft out the whole arm. I'll still draw it all the way out, even though the head's covering some of it, just because seeing those details helps me get things right that otherwise they just wouldn't be as clean. I don't think it's necessary to do it this way. It's just the way that I like to do it. I know that I have the luxury of getting to go back, and so I'm comfortable doing that. Sorry, I just put my guy up there for a second. Also, I will say I like to feather. Like if you look at where the wrist is connecting to the hand, people will do practice strokes but not put them down on the page. That does make it look cleaner when you make your actual first stroke. I'm feathering, which means you have to find the right line out of the 10 you just drew, but I like it. It's worth it to me. And again, I know I can get a clean erase, especially digitally. It's not an issue. I can keep going till I erase it. I'm not going to wear out the paper or anything like that. If you are feathering too, totally okay. Just be gentle with your strokes until you find the one that you like. Maybe you'll get to a point where you no longer, people say, oh, like it just takes one confident stroke and you're good if you're a master at it. Well, I'm maybe, but I'll say that a lot of the people that I've watched and a lot of people I respect still, will feather even if not on the paper, but above the paper, just to try and get a good feel for where they're going, especially as you're doing this many perspectives and there's this many curves. It's a lot to have to think and feel through. It's not a way that we visually see in the real world. You'll notice as we go through this, you're not just looking down at the character, you're getting a piece of his side because he's above the horizon. He's tilted that way. And then same thing with the walls. We're going to get to see both walls, which is weird if you're If you're on one side, typically you can only see the other wall, right? The wall across from you. But that's just the way we're able to play here. And then we did give him those kind of jump marks that I've just placed in, because I've decided, yeah, no, he's going to be jumping instead of falling. When he was going to be falling, I was going to put him landing on an eagle. That's kind of what I was thinking. It's relevant to something that's going on in the story that I've been working on. So I was like, oh, that would be very fun. But I was just like, no, he looks like he wants to jump. And so we're having him jump. And then we're going to build out a hallway here. I actually think that the grid we made is really fun and good for tiles. And so we'll take some time to fill those out. We're going to put slight tilts in the tile as we go, which means that the inner tiles get preference. And as you go out, they will overlap the view leftward and rightward. I want to play a little bit with scale here and just kind of figure out what I want to do for those outer tiles. It's a little tricky, again, for me. There are methods you can use in like first and second perspective to start figuring those things out. Maybe there are here that I just don't know, but again, this isn't a way that we actually see the world. And so I just wanted to read like a cohesive piece of art. And I think the biggest thing to remember here when we're doing 5-point perspective is that to a large degree, what we're doing is visual storytelling. And so, yes, it bends, but does it bend in a way that pulls us to something? And I think our lines all kind of curve, and it kind of looks like a piece of corn. My wife said that the outline for this looked like a blimp kind of. So where the bubble is where our knight is. And usually I would think, oh, well, let's put like our thinner lines in towards the knight. That way the lines are drawn, towards him in kind of a pointing way. But I think actually here this is going to work well in our favor. I do think we'll be encouraged to check out those halls, and so we want to make sure they look right. They look nice. We're going to get to do some fun color play with the 5-point perspective, but also we're going to be using a lot of cool colors to create light, which is kind of weird, and I'm excited for it. Same thing with these arrows, though. These arrows that we're going to shoot out of this little trap machine, this is the reason he's jumping here, have a fun opportunity to draw us to him and to storytell. I was trying to decide, like, why... Okay, so these things shoot out arrows. Have they never shot out arrows since this place has been abandoned? And is that why there are no arrows on the floor? And, we're at a point where it's like, maybe no one's gotten down this point. Maybe everyone knows to dodge it. But either way, there should be arrows or a body, right? Something's probably supposed to be there. This place did get looted a lot in the story. But for someone to come in, risk their life to loot trap arrows is bizarre. So I wasn't feeling that. So I was like, okay, we'll insert kind of a similar machine as the one that shoots out on the other side for them to just kind of slot back into. So we'll get to do that in a little bit. We're doing the picture. We're curving him out as well. The reason he's not following those lines perfectly is because he's actually coming towards us if we're in the aerial view a little bit, at least, before bending back in. It's almost like all of these holes are vanishing points are like black holes. And so they kind of just take everything with them. And so even this picture, which is shooting out towards us, bends back in a way. We're going to make the lines for the arrows white. I think that'll make them stand out better in the end. It does mean we won't see them very well right now. And then we're going to start blocking in base colors. We're going to make the floor a little bit of a blue-gray, the walls a little bit of a different gray. This is really just so I can distinguish them as I'm working. And now we're going to start working on some colors, some highlights, some shading. This is really interesting because we're going to have, if you can imagine, there's 2 lights in this picture. The first light is in corridor 1 where I'm working right now, and the second light is in corridor 2 where I just jumped over to. If these are hanging from the ceiling, these are some kind of ghostly lights, I guess, because there's not a lot of warmth to them at all. And what we're going to want to do is get darker as we go towards the center, which is where our Graphknight's at. We don't want to lose him in that, but that's just the reality of how lighting works. And I think it will serve to make him stand out here in just a moment, because he is going to get his own piece of work done. But then we have to bend those lights as well, just like our shapes are bent. We want to bend them on the walls. If you can imagine, I just kind of took a colored pencil on its side, rolled it out, and then smudged along those walls to get that happening. Procreate has a smudge tool. If you are looking for the finger tool, you can just kind of swipe and it'll get her done there. Then we're going to color in our machine here, our little arrow shooting trap. And again, just basic colors to start. I like to block out the colors first, and then I'm going to follow along with those color patterns of moving from like a white to a green to a blue to a purple. If you think about lighting, the way lighting tends to transition is in that way. So picture a flame, and at its center is the whitest point, and then you move out a little bit, and there's yellow, and a little bit more, and there's orange, and a little bit more, and there's red, and a little bit more, and you just keep moving across the color wheel. You can take a color wheel, if you find one, and just kind of trace your finger along it, and you will see exactly the pattern of colors that you should be using. I kind of went the opposite direction. You never really see green light, so that's kind of interesting, but I think it's working for us here. This whole picture, again, I don't think 5-point perspective is a way that anybody sees. Maybe it is, and I don't know it. Let me know, but I've never heard of that. And same thing here with these colors. The colors are a little trippy, but I think that the piece as a whole is actually going to be more visually engaging because of the way it causes us to pause. It's going to be, I think fun to see and to look at. It's going to add extra movement and dynamism to our scene, and I'm pretty excited about that. We're going to give him some lighting too. For fantasy, you want to have like high contrast. You want high highs and low lows, and I think that that's true in your story, right? Like there's typically a knight who's a hero who's got all these valiant opinions and values, and then you've got like, I don't know, a necromancer whose like favorite thing to do is to raise people from the dead and like torture their souls and make them a part of his army. Like those are usually like your guys. And I'm being a little facetious here, but there is that like real contrast of like good and bad, light and dark in the storytelling, and I think in the pictures as well, in the visuals as well. You'll have, if you think of Skyrim's like night skies, like the aurora borealis are huge. The moons are huge that you'll see sometimes. Depends on dual moons, right? The stars are bright and gazing, but then also the darkness is very, very dark. Like the forests at night turn black, and the Nazgûls screech on their black horses as the smoke comes out of their nostrils and the red beams out from their eyes. So, we want to play with that, with our shading a little bit. The reason I didn't go full ascend on our hallway with that is because I want that hallway to add to the picture, but not take away too much from our main guy. And so, I want the arrows and our little Graphknight here to be the focus. We have the arrow machine, the trap machine, firing shots out, and so that's why there's different colors. There's red and like a yellow orange going on. The red ones are indicating the arrows that shot first, and so you can see those ones are further ahead, and that's again a lighting thing. If it blasted out, that's cool. Those ones are heating down quicker, so the light is fading, and so just like we talked about, white to yellow to orange to red, these ones are cooler already. The other ones are more recently shot. And when I put this in, I'm going to wait to do this until it's actually in the comic because fonts get weird if you have to change sizes. But I'm going to put a little like PFFT across each of these arrows, white streaks, to kind of let you hear the movement. I'm going to be having our knight jumping, and he's going to go, whoa, right? And so we're going to get those things. But for now, visually, what we have that kind of indicates sounds are those lines, as well as if you look at where the trap is, little bursts of smoke coming up and out of those. I do want to color in this picture on the wall. I think it would have been okay for a graphic novel panel to leave it uncolored, but I decided ultimately, it would look nice to finish it. It would add to the story more to finish it. But you will see graphic novel panels, like if you're looking at, Marvel, DC, you name it. Name your graphic novel, but that have some background items a little unfilled out, just because they have what animators would call like ink mileage. They have so much they can do in a set time frame before they got to move on. We had time frame to do this. I wanted this to look nice for us, for you guys, and if you wanted ideas for how you might color in your picture or what you might do if you're following along. And guys, you can see the grid over it, but ultimately when we take the grid off, it's still going to look really, really cool, really fun. And this is our final piece. We have our knight jumping over these arrows. If you can picture these arrows going, and he's wandering these halls, and he is exploring. He's searching for the dragon Bagrock in our graphic novel. Thanks so much for following along, guys. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.